welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we do? I'm your host, Michelle Albers, and today I have Ann McGarry with me. Welcome, Ann.
Hi, Michelle. Great to be with you.
Where are you coming from today? Is it the UK?
No, I'm on the west coast of Ireland, beside the Atlantic Ocean, in a city called Galway, known by a few different songs, Galway Bay being one of them, and there's another song, a more recent song called The Galway Girl.
That's so cool. Okay, so before we drop in, because you and I are going to go all over the place, I know it. Would you be willing? Well, I know you would because you said you would. Will you set our intention for today?
Yeah, I suppose the intention that I'd like to set is for visibility and to be able to get my message out there clearly, and so that I can influence people and be able to share some of my experiences and knowledge with them. And that would be, I suppose, my intention for today. And I'm so thrilled to be with you, Michelle.
I'm excited you're here. And who doesn't love a good dose of wisdom? Right? It's so good. So I just want to give our listeners a little bit of a background. You and I met in an author community, and you made a quick little post about, I think it had to do with like an accountability partner or something like that. And I leaned in, and we've been chatting ever since. And there's just a lovely connection there that I really appreciate. And I just want to say thank you.
Likewise, you've been an amazing friend over that period of time, and I'm sure we'll have many more years together.
Yeah. I want to dive right into the Camino. And I'm going to start by saying there's a book coming, right? This one's not out yet. Is that true?
Yeah, it's in the editing processes, and I'm doing I'm with a UK publisher this time. I have two other books done, and I used an Irish publishing house for those two, but I decided to go to the UK for this particular book.
Okay.
On Camino Once More is the name of the book. So you probably gathered that I have a few Caminos under my belt at this point.
Right. And I would love to hear about your experiences on the Camino if you're open to sharing them. You can go wherever you want to go. I can be more specific in questions if you want, but I would just love to hear what it means to you, why you were drawn to it, or like what got you to A, go several times, and then B, decide to write a book about it.
Well, I suppose I have been doing Caminos since 2014, but as a backdrop, I believe my grandmother has drawn me there. My grandmother lived in Spain and lived in Madrid when she was single, and she lived there for 7 years, and she worked as a governess with a section of the royal family, and during the summer months they used to go to the north of Spain. So I believe her energy is pulling me to the Camino area. So that's kind of what I feel I've been drawn towards. And I've done 10 Caminos to date, and each one is very different. Now, a Camino can be a full Camino, as in, for example, the French Camino could be from Saint-Jean-de-Pied-de-Port to Santiago de Compostela. There is an English Camino which goes from Ferrol to Santiago, and there's a Portuguese one that goes to Santiago also. And then there's the loop from Santiago out to Finisterre and back. So I have done combinations of all of those. The only full Camino that I've done is the English one, which is a complete Camino. And I have done, for example, the last stretch of the Camino, the French Camino from Sarria to Santiago, which is about 130 kilometers. Now, just bear in mind that I've just turned 70, so I'm not a spring chicken. But I've done that Camino 4 times, that portion of the Camino 4 times. And each time I've got something different. Now, the book is based also on the French Camino, but between the cities of Burgos and Leon. So this, as I said, is a different Camino to the other ones that I've done. But I suppose a Camino is really you walking walking in nature, as I call it, listening to the whispers that you get while you're on it. And just, it's an inward journey as well. Certainly it is for me. Why I keep doing them, I find them hugely beneficial for me, particularly around my writings. I've got inspiration from my writings, but I've also had periods of time when I was stuck, particularly with the last book, which was called Power of W. And I was very frustrated that I wasn't getting the book finished. And I can remember being in the cathedral in Santiago and just asking, putting out the intention that whatever obstacles or blocks were there for my book to get finished, or at least for the manuscript to get finished and sent to the publishing house, that they would be removed on that Camino, and that I would free myself up to finishing the book. And oddly enough, that Camino is quite interesting, because the messages I was getting back as I was walking that Camino was, I was taking pictures of nature as I was walking, as well as journaling. And the message was very, very clear to draw 3 paintings of that particular Camino. And once I had done that, the writing would start. And true, it happened. The minute I got home from that Camino, I started painting, got out the easel and the paintbrush and the paints, painted 3, and I actually painted a 4th picture of areas that impressed me as I was walking, and each of those has a particular meaning for me. But the important thing to say is that when I had done those paintings, that I started writing, continued my writing, recapped on what I had done, and spent the next 10 days writing, not continuously, but over a period of 10 days. And the book was on, or the manuscript was ready for the publisher at that point. So, as I say, I find Caminos inspiring. Another aspect that I get from the Caminos is very much around purpose and getting clarity on purpose. Purpose is hugely important for me. My contribution, my legacy, so to speak. I don't have any children, so my books are legacies for me, and they're important in that respect. Between my books and my seminars and coaching, that I believe is my purpose. And at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm focusing chiefly on the 3rd act, or the last phase of life, because guess what? I'm in it. And I have a particular interest in that stage, to live with passion and power and purpose. So for me, that's my key message. And any offerings that I have will be focused in that regard. So I have moved away from the normal training and development and coaching that I had done up to now, which was mainly in the management, leadership, personal effectiveness areas, to focus primarily on the 3rd act, which I think is a hugely significant phase of life, not just for me, but for everybody.
And that's what The Power of W is, right? That book is about the 3rd act, or is that a different book?
It is, yeah, the 3rd act. Yeah, it is the 3rd act. And in that book, I've developed a three C's. It's a personal development model for anybody. And the first of those C's is about conscious awareness, and that's being present in the moment and being self-aware. The second C has to do with connections, and that's all our connections are, the close connections, our intimate relationships, and then wider circles, friends, and then out into the community. And the third C has to do with contribution. Again, one of my pet topics these days.
Yeah. So that's the book that's complete and is already out there. We'll make sure we put links in the show notes. I want to circle back to the Camino, because I know you and I have had conversations about that. And just what I heard in what you were just saying is that there's intention there, and then there's the journey itself, and then there's reflection. And I think that's a beautiful trifecta of the healing journey, I guess. I mean, I feel like the healing journey is very much about intention and the journey itself, like the walking or getting the awareness, being open to receiving the information, I guess is how I would say that. And then the reflection of like, what does it mean for you and how can it support and assist you? At one point when we were talking, and this might not be the case anymore, but I remember us talking about the Camino and the chakras. Is that part of the book or is that not part of the book?
Well, yes, but I don't say this new book. I don't say it explicitly, but I do work through the elements that one would see in relation to the 7 main chakras.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we don't have to dive into the chakras or break them down. So, but that's really awesome that you wrote about it in a way where you don't have to mention that it's about chakras, because it's not. It's bigger than that, right? And yeah.
Like for example, foundation, which would, in our terms, we would call it the root chakra, or we call it the base chakra. And in that area, what I have looked at is blocks that can occur. And particularly important for me was this whole thing about ancestral, I suppose, issues that we would carry and possibly carry unconsciously. So I did a fair amount of work on the Camino around that as well, for those to surface. We can go back about 7 different generations and we can be holding issues going back as far as that. And it's important to let those go as well, and to maybe embrace them for what they are and whatever gift they have given us. And the gift could be sadness or whatever, but to work through those and to embrace them rather than keep stuff suppressed, because unconsciously we could be carrying those. So I think it's important that that I, in my own life, have dipped into that and got some clarity around some of the issues that I would see cropping up in my own life and wondered, where did this come from? I consciously didn't bring that into my life. So that's just one example where I would have used, and I would call that the foundation. That's only one issue that can occur with the foundation. The other aspect could be to do with us nurturing ourselves in relation to eating healthily, just as another example, getting adequate sleep and exercise. Again, dealing with the physical aspects there. And I have put that into the book as well in the category of the first key, which is around foundation. There are 7 keys to this particular book, but that is just an example of how I've used the chakras for one of those.
So is the book, you said there's 7 keys. So is it meant to be like a guide told through stories, or what does it look like?
Well, the book, I've divided the book into 3 different sections. That's on Camino once more. And the subtitle is 7 Keys to Embrace life and to actually move into the freedom of joy. So it's keys to embrace the freedom of joy. So rather than push stuff down and feel we have to heal it, we need to look at ourselves and see ourselves as whole beings rather than segmented. All parts of us make up the whole, and it's important for us to remember that. So there are gifts in the shadow, and people mightn't realize that, but there are gifts to be uncovered and to be embraced rather than suppressed.
Yeah. Will you tell me a little bit more about you can pick any one or all of them, like collectively, do your journeys on the Camino offer you, I mean, you're already talking about it on some level, but I'm looking for a little more specifics on the journey. Like, I'm assuming you walk and then kind of park yourself for a little while and reflect and journal, and then you walk some more and then find a place to land.
Okay, I'll just go through the book on Camino once more, and just to go back to your question and then move forward with it. I have divided the book into 3 sections. First is pre-Camino, and that is to do with my preparation. The second piece of the book is about the actual Camino. And the third piece of the book is post Camino. So I kind of have it. I'm a scientist originally. I'm a chemist, so I'm fairly logical in my approach. Some things don't don't go away. So in relation to that, then the preparation had to do with setting my intention, and we've touched on that before. Now, this Camino was quite different because I didn't go near Santiago de Compostela. Usually speaking, I would be in the cathedral and I would have done some work at home through maybe do a meditation or certainly quiet time journaling, and I would have had developed, if you like, a core intention. But I like to be able to articulate that in the cathedral in Santiago. Now, this time, very, very different. So I was doing a lot more preparation at home. And sometimes I might use oracle decks and just go into meditation and then pull cards to say, I'd say I want to focus on, okay, maybe my purpose, my offering, might be one question. The next question would be my very close relationships. And there might be a third one. And I would draw cards and I would use them, if you like, as a basis, the information I get from the oracle deck. And even just setting it up like that, it's amazing what can actually come through to you as you walk. So this particular Camino, giving you the nuts and bolts of it, a friend of mine had been over from Ireland. I was in Portugal at the time. My husband did not want me to do this particular Camino because I had a very bad chest infection and he was seriously worried about my health, and I'm slightly stubborn. And I decided I was not going to be deterred. So he volunteered to drive me to Burgos. So we journeyed from the north, slightly north of Lisbon to Burgos, and we stopped in Salamanca for, I think we had 2 days in Salamanca, and then on to Burgos, and we overnighted in Burgos. And then I started my Camino and he went back to Portugal. So it talks about all that, and it also talks about the lack of preparation. And I'm a very organized person, but I was hugely, I had everything laid out, but I was doing nothing. I had no hotels booked or anything like that. Oh yeah, by the way, I tend to do hotels in the main because I am of a certain vintage now, and I don't think you have to suffer all the time. And I'm not saying staying in albergues is suffering, but I prefer to stay in hotels where I can. And this Camino, it wasn't always possible. And I think it makes for a good read as to what different things cropped up while I was staying in these places. So anyway, it talks about the setting up and setting off from Burgos. Then the Camino itself then came from Burgos to Leon, as I said initially. It was bookended by those two cities, and the whole idea was to do it on the Meseta Plain, which is quite a challenging part of the French Camino. So the whole idea was that I would start to look at maybe shadow personality in that environment. And it certainly threw up quite a few things for me. And then the third part of the book looks at post-Camino and looking at the 7 keys, as I mentioned, and my experience with them. And then what I do is in all my books, I have a coaching element to all of my books, and I put in reflective questions for the reader to engage with the material and for them to make it practical and for them to work on their own issues, on their own journey, whatever their Camino is.
So your personal story of your journey on the Camino, this particular journey, but also you have experience with several others, can be a metaphor. Like they don't have to go to the Camino to benefit from reading the book. They can ride along with the story, so to speak, and then use the prompts to go inward and do their own work. I feel like this is a really spiritual journey for you. Has it been every time? And I might be wrong,
Yes.
so I should ask that question
Every
first.
single time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's really, when you're doing Camino, and particularly this Camino that the book is based on, I got to Porto, and I met my husband there, and we went to this charming little town. It's called the Venice of Portugal, Aveiro, and it has little canals and boats in it. Not they are like gondolas, but they're not as deep as a gondola. And in that environment, it was a very good transition. Peaceful, still in nature. Because sometimes going back to your day-to-day world can be somewhat jarring. People may not understand the work and the power of the Camino, and that you have changed, and they may not be able to relate to you as well. So there is an adjustment period as well. So for Caminos, it's important that you are gentle with yourself during the entire Camino that you're taking, whether that is 100, could be even shorter than 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers would be roughly 60 miles, just to put it into perspective. So the entire French Camino is 780 kilometers. So the stretch that I had been doing 4 times would have been about 130 kilometers each time. And I'm not sure, the Burgos to Leon, actually, while I'm going to digress slightly, I suppose if you look at the Burgos to Leon section, that's almost like the heart chakra. If you look at the distance and divide it up by 7, you will probably find it hitting around the 4th chakra, the heart chakra. And that was interesting in itself as well, that it was a question of opening your heart to absolutely everything, to all aspects of you, not shutting down on certain things that you feel are not worthy of looking at, or that you feel people may judge you.
And when you were on the Camino, you were alone, correct?
Oh, yeah. I've been doing Caminos now for the last 3 or 4 years on my own. My husband did Caminos with me initially. He did 4, and he's not going doing anymore because he's got a gammy knee. And the last one he did actually was the Portuguese coastal Camino with me, and it was for the love of me that he did it, not for himself. So I prefer to be on my own.
So when you're on the Camino, I'm thinking about your book specifically. I mean, but you can speak to any one of your journeys. I'm not like beholden to it being exactly only about your book. It can be in any of them. But I'm curious what happens, because I'm curious what happens when you're on the Camino and you're very intentionally doing, like you mentioned, shadow work, right? I imagine some stuff comes up and there comes in some challenges. There's a part of me that thinks it's really beautiful that you're alone because there's nowhere to go but to yourself. But I can imagine that being really intense, perhaps, or at the very least challenging. How do you navigate that when you're, I don't know. I mean, like, can you speak about that a little bit? I think it's rare. Maybe that's not fair. I was going to say, I think it's rare for us to do something like that where we're journeying on our own and then something unlocks or like gets revealed or, shows itself to us. And then there we sit alone. That's such a great invitation to go within and just be with it, maybe without even, like, there's no plan. I would imagine that when you're walking on the Camino and you're on that journey, when you receive the messages and you are inward and stuff starts bubbling up, I would imagine that can start feeling really intense. Did you have to prepare to hold yourself for that? I mean, that's a big question, and I asked that in a really messy way, but I'm hoping you follow me. And
It is a big question. I suppose, in a way, I've done a fair amount of work over the years, over the last 30 years. So I suppose I don't find it as challenging when it does surface. I just seem to be able to cope with it. I just listen. I don't know, something is popping into my head. Maybe I might use this analogy. You know, when you have nettles and you get stung by a nettle, invariably, if you look around in nature, you'll find a dock leaf very nearby. So I'm going to use that analogy there. So when something rough comes up, you know, you might find something that will soothe that or allow you to be at peace with what's coming up, to accept it.
I love that. Well, I love that I didn't know that. Like nettles isn't a thing that I have nearby, but I'm assuming the leaf you mentioned is the remedy for nettles. I love the concept or the thought or even the hope that when we uncover something prickly that stings a bit, that if we just pause and look around, there's probably something within us or nearby us that could support us and comfort us, take some of that sting away. That's such a beautiful, I love that. That's such a beautiful.
That just came into my head as we were talking.
I imagine that happens a lot on the Camino as well. If you go in with the intention of it being a spiritual journey and a healing journey and with the intention of writing a book, when you're done, I can imagine that you get a lot of what I would call divine downloads.
Yes. And the last Camino was particularly challenging for me. The Meseta Plain, if you do it in summertime, it is sun-kissed, might be a gentle way of describing it. You're dealing with intense heat. It could be 40 degrees of heat and very little shelter by way of trees. Now, I did this particular Camino around April, May time. And the first thing was I was ill prepared in terms of my pack. I thought we were going to be getting sunshine. And in fact, it was quite harsh winds and we had rain as well. So, you know, there are challenges, physical challenges as well. As I said, I went with a very bad chest infection, which wasn't clearing, getting worse. And I had to kind of truncate my Camino. And one of the clear messages that I got is you do not have to suffer to learn the lessons. And that for me was a big one, huge one, because I'd always do the hard slog. I never did things easily, or I never took the easy route. And the whole thing was to be gentle with myself and to accept when I had to stop, and that was it. And one of the lessons was that I was being propelled forward on the Camino, which was quite amazing. As I said, you'll see it in the book, but there were quite a few amazing lessons in that. And the other thing was to accept and to surrender to what is. Those were big lessons for me. You know, we all talk about being able to surrender, but, you know, the ego wants to hold on and be in control. So, yeah, there were quite a few lessons there.
When you say the Camino propelled you forward, you don't mean like by steps. You mean in your inner landscape, your inner self, your growth.
No, not necessarily, because at one stage I was very close, as it happened, because when I went to the doctor after the Camino, they said you were very close to getting pneumonia. So yes, my Camino was truncated. And for a good reason. I would have seriously damaged my physical being. And there were things put in my path to help me to move forward physically. And that I needed to avail of those rather than continue on and risk possibly hospitalization on the Camino.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's what I mean by the interventions and being propelled forward, and to accept it.
That's
You
a
know,
pretty that's a pretty
it was
big.
very, very difficult for me to. I even remember being in Leon and said, can I go a little bit further? And I decided, I got myself a very nice hotel in Leon is a wonderful city, absolutely fabulous. And I was there and I was saying, I wonder, am I strong enough to continue on? So I actually tested myself one day. I stayed there for 2 days. On the first day, I said, would I go out as far as it's called Virgin of the Camino? It was about 10 kilometers from Leon. So I ventured off, kind of nothing with me except maybe a purse. And I took off, and I can remember I was absolutely exhausted. And I was walking through dreadful kilometers of industrial zone. It was really boring, to say the least. And eventually I got to Virgin of Camino and went into the Basilica, and I wanted to get, you get a passport when you're on the Camino, and the intention is that you, between each of the different areas, you get the passport stamped twice, just to prove that you had done the legwork. Or indeed, if you're on horseback, or you could be on a bicycle, you can do the Camino in multiple different ways. And anyway, I went into the Basilica and there was no salute to be had. And I was very disappointed. I would have thought that I would have been able to get one of these in the church. So I went across the road to a cafe and I was able to get my salute there. But I walked back then to get back to Leon. But that really proved to me, there was kind of more little pieces of information. How much information do you need to stop you? You need to stop now. And eventually I had to accept that I wasn't able to do much more. And this was my Camino for me. But in traveling from there, then on the bus to get back to Porto, where my husband was going to collect me, I continued to journal. And what I thought was initially that my book would not be complete, but in actual fact, it was totally different. My book is completed with that journeying as well, in the bus back to Porto. It was just amazing. So, Woody Allen has an interesting quote, and he says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. Mm-hmm. So that was a good case of that. So lots of lessons to be learned. Some of them hard, others were easy to learn, yeah. But nevertheless, the Camino definitely opens you up.
I heard a lot of surrender in that, and that's a pretty big deal coming from someone who self-proclaimed herself as stubborn at the beginning of this podcast. I'm like, that's
yeah.
really, I mean, I'm also stubborn, so I can relate to what that might feel like and how we might push in certain areas over surrender. And I love that you landed in a place where you came to surrender. And I also love what you said about, like you at one point had a concern about your book not being complete because the journey didn't look how you had originally intended it to look. Yeah. And I love the surrender in that as well. It's like, well, the book might have had a scaffolding or a structure or an idea, a concept in your mind. And then the Camino took it to a different place.
Yes.
And when that happens, for me, at least in my personal belief and experience, is that's when the magic happens. That's when it's really good, because it's not about your logical attachments or heartfelt attachments even. It's about divine process and leaning into the unknown, which I find there's so many answers in the unknown. And I don't say that in a way like we need the answers in that way. I just mean like when we're in the unknown, that's when discovery can happen. And sometimes the answers are just the next stepping stone. And sometimes they land right deep into our soul and take us to a whole new place. And they're not good, bad, or indifferent. It just is. But I think, I don't know, it's such a beautiful process that you just described. But also I can imagine the challenges and the complications and the like push pull within that as a person who shows up in a way that, like, when you go to do something, you have a plan. And that when that plan goes awry, it can be really challenging. And I love that you leaned in, and I can't wait to read the book.
The funny thing was, that the 7 keys came out post Camino.
That's awesome.
And I may not have necessarily done that with the book if the mule had continued being mule-headed.
It sounds like a challenging journey, but it also sounds like the Camino, it sounds ancestral to me for you when you describe it, connected to your grandmother. And then it also sounds like it's a really powerful healing journey. It sounds like every journey that you've had there has offered you something that you've been able to
absolutely receive. Every single journey. I can remember for the second book, I was in Lanzarote at the time, and I had done a meditation, and the 3 C's emerged in that for me, but the whole 3 C's got totally developed when I was on that Camino. And just an example of living in the moment, to give you an example of that, before Finisterre, there's a magnificent horseshoe-shaped beach. I probably won't pronounce the name properly now, but it's called Langostina. And it was seen as the place for purification. You go in there for a swim. But anyway, I was swimming in there before I actually reached Finisterre. And I came out of I had got more and more inspiration while I was in the water. And I just got pen to paper before I even towed myself dry. I just went straight in and just started writing what was coming through. It was just quite amazing.
That's amazing. So you've mentioned 3 books, 1 in the process. Can you tell me the names of the other 2?
The first book puts me in the management category, management and leadership. It's called Pair of Leadership. It was a practice for developing leadership effectiveness. And what I did was I used the word leader, which has 10 letters in it, and I wrote 10 chapters around leadership. So I flipped the word leadership, putting the P at the beginning and the L at the end of it. And the P went and stood for a purpose. What is your purpose being a leader? And then L, the last letter, when I flipped it, was that of leading. Leadership is a choice. It's not a title. So that book in itself was, I suppose there's a big personal development aspect to that book. And again, I've used a coaching framework as well. So again, to help readers engage with it. The second book, Power of W, Women Thriving in Their Third Act, is around, it's a book that's equally applicable to men also. Hope I don't alienate that segment of society. A psychologist, a clinical psychologist, Tony Humphreys, he's an international speaker, but he's based in Cork here in Ireland. He said that the book was equally applicable for men as it was for women. Okay, so that book came out actually in 2023, and this third book, as we've been discussing on Camino once more, 7 Keys to Embrace the Freedom of Joy. Hopefully I get that book published by the end of this year, but certainly if it doesn't come out by the end of this year, it'll be early spring 26.
Awesome. I love this. I love spending time with you. I love hearing your stories. And there's just so much opportunity to, or maybe it's invitation to lean into the unknown in this story. And I find that a beautiful thing as someone who used to be terrified of the unknown, now sees it as an opportunity to transform for the best and highest good. I guess that's just how it's played out for me. But I resisted that for a very long time. So I love that you have books that can support people on their journey, even if it's simply just to offer a new perspective and an invitation to explore what might work for you. I think that's a glorious thing. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time, and I'll make sure we put links to your books. Do you also have a website that people can find you?
I have, but that's undergoing change at the moment. I've had a bit of problems with my website, but it was annmcgarry.com. But I can fill you in a bit more detail on that at a later date.
Well, is there any last little golden nugget, whether it be about the Camino or something else, that you would like to share with our listeners?
I suppose one of the messages that doesn't get out there as much as possibly should is that we are whole and we're complete. We're beings of light. We are love. And joy is a natural aspect of us. And to live in joy is really, really important. And that joy can only be accessed in the present moment. So we need to be self-aware. So when we see ourselves kind of dropping off and going off course slightly, once we find ourselves doing that, we should reach for the next highest vibration and then make our way back to joy. So it's been wonderful, Michelle, having this time with you. I really treasured our time here today. So thank you for the opportunity of talking with you.
Thank you so much. I always love spending time with you. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Michelle, and thanks again.
Okay, bye-bye.
As they say in Ireland, Banachty. Banach means blessings. So I'm sending you many blessings, which is Banachty in Irish.
Banachty?
Yeah, I'll write it down for you.
Beautiful. Well, I'm saying it back. Okay. I might not be saying it perfectly, but I'm giving it a go.
You're doing very well.
Okay, that's a wrap for today.
Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you again.